Something unprecedented is unfolding right now. Hidden behind the burning brilliance of our sun, a traveler from beyond the stars has broken the oldest rule in astronomy. Its name is 3I/ATLAS, an interstellar visitor that has forced scientists to question everything they thought they knew about light, motion, and matter itself. For weeks, its luminous tail did something no comet has ever done before. It pointed toward the sun. Imagine a candle flame bending into the wind instead of away from it. That's how impossible this is. And then, just as suddenly, the tail flipped back, streaming outward again like every ordinary comet in the cosmos. To the scientific community, this was not a curiosity. It was a violation of cosmic law. Every comet's tail always points away from the sun. Solar radiation and the solar wind push dust and gas outward. That's the one rule of celestial motion everyone agrees on. But 3I Atlas refused to obey it. At first, astronomers blamed perspective, maybe geometry, maybe illusion. But then two of humanity's sharpest eyes confirmed the unthinkable: the Nordic Optical Telescope in the Canary Islands and the James Webb Space Telescope, orbiting 1,000,000 miles from Earth. Both saw the same impossible image: a bright, razor-thin jet of gas and light stretching straight toward the sun. It wasn't faint. It wasn't diffuse. It was coherent, as if focused through an invisible nozzle. And when it finally flipped direction, it did so cleanly, smoothly, deliberately. One astronomer summed it up in a single word that shouldn't exist in physics: choreography. Because choreography implies control. In the cold, predictable world of celestial mechanics, comets are obedient. They are relics, dirty snowballs following gravity's script. But this one behaves like a living system, or worse, like a machine. Over 8 days, its luminous jet dimmed, paused, and reformed on the opposite side. To the untrained eye, that's just light. To physicists, it's symmetry, too perfect to be random. Meanwhile, Webb's spectrographs revealed something even stranger. Its atmosphere, its coma, isn't water-based like every other comet we've studied. It's 87% carbon dioxide, 9% carbon monoxide, and only 4% water vapor, a ratio so alien that nothing in our solar system compares. This isn't a frozen snowball. It's a vault of carbon, a body that formed in the deepest cold of another star's nursery, perhaps a system that died long before our sun was born. And despite erupting hundreds of kilograms of gas every second, 3I Atlas remains intact. Its structure endures. Its composition remains constant, even as it absorbs over 30 gigawatts of solar energy every second. That's enough heat to vaporize an ordinary comet instantly. But this one just keeps going. Astronomers describe it as if it's regulating itself. The gas emissions appear balanced, aligned, even timed. Not chaotic plumes of ice and dust, but jets that push, pivot, and stabilize. Every model fails to explain it. No simulation matches the precision seen in the data. It behaves as though it's controlling its own temperature, or its own thrust. That's when a quiet question started to circulate through late-night control rooms. What if this isn't just a comet? Because if it's regulating heat, if it's balancing jets to maintain direction, then what we're watching might not be chaos. It might be design. Skeptics are right to push back. Extreme CO2 activity can create symmetrical jets. Coincidences happen. Nature is clever. But timing isn't coincidence. The reversal, the exact moment the tail flipped, happened precisely as 3I Atlas was slipping behind the sun into solar conjunction, when it became invisible to every telescope on Earth. If you wanted to change direction without being seen, that's when you do it. Because near perihelion, at closest approach to the sun, even a tiny thrust can shift a trajectory dramatically, a maneuver known as a gravity assist. And that's exactly where 3I Atlas was when the reversal occurred: hidden, silent, untouchable. The last observations before conjunction came from the Nordic Optical Telescope. Frame by frame, the tail dimmed, then froze, then reversed. Not disorderly, but synchronized. And then it was gone, lost behind the sun's glare. At that distance, the heat should be catastrophic. Surface temperatures over 600 Kelvin, sunlight pounding it like a furnace. Ice should vaporize, crusts should fracture. Yet there were no signs of destruction. The object entered the solar fire and simply disappeared from view. For weeks, Earth-based telescopes were blind. James Webb's golden mirrors were turned away to protect its instruments. We could only wait. And in that waiting, silence grew heavy. But there was one last piece of data, something that never reached the public. On October 2nd, just before conjunction, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter aimed its high-rise camera toward the object. Each pixel represented roughly 30 kilometers of detail, the sharpest image ever taken of an interstellar visitor. Those images were never released. The official reason? A government shutdown, data processing delayed. But to astronomers, that excuse didn't add up. High-rise data transmits automatically, unaffected by bureaucracy. The images exist, somewhere in NASA's encrypted servers. Meanwhile, the European Space Agency released a backup dataset from its JUICE probe. Low resolution, blurry, cropped, useless. A faint smear of light where something extraordinary should have been. So we're left with an empty space, both literally and figuratively. And in that void, speculation spreads. Maybe the missing data shows nothing. Maybe it shows structure, geometry, even artificial symmetry. Either way, someone, somewhere, knows. By early November, the sun moved aside, and the first new detections came in. 3i Atlas was back, but it wasn't the same. Its brightness had doubled. Its trajectory had shifted, just slightly, but measurably. That shouldn't be possible without external force. And then the real shock. The ratios of gases in its coma, still exactly the same. CO2, CO, and water, unchanged to the 4th decimal place. Under solar stress, that's like holding a snowflake intact inside a volcano. To some, this was confirmation of endurance. To others, it was proof of control. The Nordic telescope captured faint structure within the coma, a hazy outline that looked almost hexagonal. The rotation period remained constant. Precisely 8.7 hours, not slowing, not wobbling, not fragmenting. And from Webb came another enigma, a faint infrared pulse, repeating every 47 seconds. Too steady to be random, too rhythmic to be geological. At first, scientists assumed it was a thermal oscillation, maybe internal stress. But when the timing was analyzed, it formed a pattern, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, prime numbers. Not once, not twice, but repeating again and again. Coincidence? Maybe. But the universe rarely counts in primes. By mid-November, something even stranger happened. Deep space solar wind monitors detected faint magnetic pulses, repeating every 22 seconds. At first dismissed as noise, the signals matched the object's rhythm. 2 frequencies, 2 harmonics, locked together. That's not noise. That's a system. Every scientist who saw the data felt the same silent chill, because if it has systems, it might have purpose. Still, the debate raged. Is it natural? Artificial? Both? Maybe a comet with feedback loops in its outgassing. Maybe a machine disguised as one. But whatever it was, it had survived the sun. By December, the object was racing toward its closest pass by Earth, about 0.23 astronomical units away. Safe, but close enough for every telescope on the planet to focus on it. From Chile to Hawaii, from orbit to the desert arrays, a global network of observatories locked onto a single target. It was the first time in history humanity orchestrated a multi-planetary observation of one interstellar visitor. And then, just before dawn on December 19th, it happened. At 03:37 UTC, every receiver across the world, optical, infrared, radio, went silent. For exactly 52 seconds, no signal, no photons, nothing. And then, as if the universe exhaled, it returned. Brighter, faster, different. The pulses had changed. Not primes anymore. Now they drew patterns, triads, hexagons, fractal repetitions. It was as if the object was writing with light, sketching geometry and frequency, and then silence again. When the data was reviewed, agencies struggled for words. NASA called it an anomalous photometric event. The European Space Agency called it non-periodic resonance. The public called it something simpler, a reply, because that's what it felt like. In the days that followed, the pulses slowed, faded, and vanished. The comet's brightness dimmed. Its orbit changed once more, ever so slightly. No longer on a hyperbolic escape trajectory. Now it was bound. Locked into a long elliptical orbit around the sun. It wasn't leaving. It was staying. Somewhere out there, beyond Mars, the traveler was circling back, a loop that will bring it home again in about 22,000 years. And just like that, the world fell quiet again. Maybe it was all coincidence. Maybe geometry and physics conspired to mimic intent. Maybe nature simply reminded us how little we understand. Or maybe, just maybe, we just witnessed something that was never meant to be called natural. Because 3i Atlas has already changed us. For the first time in decades, the world looked upward together. Not in fear, but in wonder. Governments shared data. Scientists collaborated across borders. People stared into the night sky and whispered the same question. What if we're not the only ones who move with purpose? Whether 3i Atlas is an alien relic, a frozen probe from a dead civilization, or simply nature at her most theatrical, it has forced us to see intelligence not as a shape, but as a behavior. To control heat, to manage energy, to survive chaos with precision. That is intelligence, biological or not. Somewhere beyond Mars, a dim point of light continues to glide through the dark, its tail fading into silence. Occasionally, instruments still detect faint echoes at the same 22-second rhythm, ghost harmonics drifting on the solar wind. Noise, perhaps, or memory. Either way, we keep listening, because one day it will return, and when it does, we will be waiting, with better instruments, wiser minds, and a deeper humility. Maybe then we'll understand what 3i Atlas truly was. A comet, a machine, or a mirror. A mirror held up to our own curiosity, reminding us that intelligence does not conquer the universe. It converses with it. We looked into the glare, expecting answers. What we found was a question written in light, geometry, and time. And perhaps that was the message all along, that the universe has been speaking, patiently, waiting for us to finally notice. Maybe 3i Atlas just changed its trajectory to avoid us. And honestly, given what we're like online, who could blame it? Still, if it decides to swing back for round 2, you'll want to know first. So hit subscribe before the aliens do.